Today we're going to go through the installation process of the aero actuator system on a C66 engine. As you notice, we're installing the aero actuator system to our cutaway in our showroom. So you will see some differences in this installation, but it will be exactly as will be performed in the field. All C-Series engines, the actuating system is installed in the same sequence in the same order. So there will be no differences from the C46 all the way through our C96 aero engines. The first thing we need to do is make sure we have the proper clutch orientation, which means we're going to rotate the clutch to get it to where it will actually work with the aero actuating system. First thing we need to do is engage the clutch, and then remove the handle, remove all the bolts, and rotate the clutch in the proper direction. Once you have removed all the bolts holding the clutch in place, you want to use the handle to rotate the clutch to where the inspection plate is straight up. And you'll have to bump it around a little bit. And then, once you get the clutch rotated, we want to replace all the bolts and make sure that the clutch is firmly tightened. So what you want to do is make sure you tighten all the bolts on the clutch. Now you'll notice we don't have any bolts here. We deliberately left those out because we have to attach a bracket later on in the process, so we will not have to, we'll put those bolts back in at that time. Once we've tightened all the bolts that hold the clutch in place, the next thing is to do is make sure that your clutch handle is engaged, which means the clutch pads and the clutch shag will not turn once engaged. At this point, we want to remove the clutch handle and disregard it. Will no longer be used in the process. Next process is we're going to install this top actuator bracket, which will go right here in this location as demonstrated. So once we do, what we're going to do is install the bolts that come with the kit. These are 1/4 inch longer than the standard bolts, and tighten them up into the clutch housing and tighten into place. All right, the next step is we need to remove the lower bolt, sub-base bolt holding the engine crankcase to the sub-base. Alright, we're going to remove the lower base bolt, flat washer, and lock washer. Keep it handy because we will reuse it. Once you remove the base bolt, the second step is to install the lower base bracket, or what you also call the lower actuator bracket. Using the same bolt. Just hand tighten the bolt back into place. There's no need to tighten it down at this time. The reasons is that we will be needing to make some minor adjustments in the forward and backwards position of the bracket. So hand tighten the bracket and leave loose at this time. Okay, next thing we're going to do is install the actuator itself. You have your upper actuator bracket and your actuator mounting bracket here. While installing the pins, you don't want a bunch of end plates, so we used the 2 brass spacers here. Install them to remove all the end plate where we don't have any back and forth motion between the bracket and the pin. Slide the pin all the way through, then attach the light nylon nut and tighten completely down. You will have movement between the bolt and the actuator, and I'll demonstrate that as soon as we get everything tight. This will prevent any binding of any of the moving parts once the actuator is completely installed. So you'll notice, bottom it down completely against the shoulder. You'll have back and forth movement, which is normal. And now your actuator is installed to your upper actuator bracket. The next step is we're going to install the lower actuator bracket. Now, before you install this bracket, it is highly recommended to put a small amount of grease, oil, or any kind of lubricant to prevent any kind of rusting and to assure a nice smooth movement of this bracket.
you want to install lower bracket here, install the clevis bracket, crevice pin, or the crevice bolt, all the way through. You have a small spacer. This goes on the back side, and then you have your nylon lock nut. Once again, tighten it all the way down until the bolt is completely tight. You will have back and forth movement because we have to have play to assure easy, smooth operation. We don't want any binding. So as you can see, we have back and forth movement in this location. Next, we're going to install the secondary lever assembly or lower bracket. Notice the slot. The slot end goes in to this section right here of the actuator. Once again, make sure you apply grease or some type of lubricant to prevent any binding later on. You have a large flat washer and your clevis pin. So we want to install one flat washer, notch in, remember the notch section. Slide the clevis pin in. Second flat washer on the back side, and then install the nylon lock and tighten down completely tight. You will have, once again, slacking movement in this bracket and in the bolts. Notice the slack and the movement, and we have up and down motion here. Now we need to join the lower two brackets with the actuator itself, which means everything will come up together in one joining piece. But before you join all of them, once again, a little bit of lubricant on the bracket to prevent any kind of binding. You want to install a flat washer on your clevis pin. Here comes the fun part, is getting all this lined up all at the same time. Now you may have to turn by low pressure, and you can see it there, and it slipped in. Your Teflon nut on the back side. And once again, tighten it down completely till it's tight. You just want to basically just snug it down and make sure that you have slack and movement back and forth on all the actuator brackets and all the handles. All right. Okay, next we're going to tighten down. Remember, we left the lower actuator bracket loose earlier in the process. Now's the time we're going to tighten it up. The reason why we left it loose, with all the bracketry hooked up, it gives you some forward and backwards movement. This is for adjustment as we go, when we go to adjust the clutch. This will allow us to give us a little bit of adjustment to adjust it properly. My suggestion is find the middle of the slot and tighten it down in the middle. This will give us forward and backwards adjustment if needed. Normally, the center section of the clutch will work perfectly, but this way, if you put it in the center, it will leave you a chance to adjust. Now, we want to make sure this bracket does not move anytime once the clutch is engaging or disengaging, which will throw off the adjustment, which will cause damage to your clutch. So I'm using a torque wrench to tighten it up, and I suggest a minimum torque of 100 foot-pounds. You can hear it right there. And I'll double check it. There's our 100 foot-pounds. If you feel like torquing it even more, go ahead, because the boat will allow you to do that. It's just that 100 foot-pounds is a minimum. We don't want any slippage here at all. Should have loose linkage. Should have a loose clutch handle. Now we're ready to apply power and see if our clutch works normally and make any adjustments if needed. All right, once we've had all the actuator brackets installed, you want to make sure that you have in your clutch, with the clutch disengaged and the free spinning shaft, you want to make sure that we have back and forth movement in your clutch handle. We want to make sure that all linkage is smooth and loose and no binding or no pinching anywhere in the system. If you do have any pinching, you may need to adjust the brackets in and out. Slide the bracket here in and out to remove any bindings or binding. When you torque it back up, make sure you put a minimum of 100 foot-pounds torque on this boat. Just make sure everything's free and clear. Once we've done that, we're going to test the actuator itself, which we're going to grab the actuator wire and the wire from, in this particular case, the Arrow Auto Start system. And we just plug those in. There is not a positive and there is not a negative on these. It can be reverse polarity, so if you plug it in and it happens to move on you when you don't want it to, all we need to do is unplug it, reverse the wires, reverse the polarity, because the actuator needs to be in a fully retracted position with the unit not running and with the clutch disengaged. So once we've done that, we're going to go through a test, but you're going to see the actuator come down, rotate the clutch handle, lock the clutch in place. Now, once the clutch has been engaged, you should not be able to turn the shaft. You still should have free movement. You won't have as much in the retract as you do in the retracted position. You'll have free movement here. You should have free movement everywhere in the entire system. You will retract the clutch, which means disengage the clutch. You should hear a loud click. That's the clutch disengaging. And free movement, once again, just to double check, make sure that nothing's moved and everything's in the correct position. Okay, let's just start over. Once we run through a completed test and you're satisfied that everything is working correctly, if you need any additional information or a fully detailed manual on the Arrow clutch actuator system, you can contact our customer service department, or you can download a copy from our website, which is arrowengine.com. Thank you very much, and thanks for watching.